Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology turned podcast. Everyone, welcome back onto the program. Today on the show, we have the one, the only, Mr. Ralph Bond, as we are going to be talking about a number of different stories, that number being 4, of course. But everyone, this segment is dedicated to all things science and technology, as Ralph is our science and technology trends correspondent. So, with that being said, everyone, computeramerica.com, that's where you'll find everything, including the show notes, links, videos, just everything and anything you need to know about today's show, you'll find there. On top of that, you'll find articles, reviews, show notes, podcasts, social media links, contests that we're doing, all that and more at computeramerica.com. Definitely check that out. And also, if you'd like to email us, live at computeramerica.com. And hey, if you send us a story that is up Ralph's alley, then, we can forward it along and maybe your story can make it onto his radar. So, I've said his name enough and I think we can go ahead and jump into this. So, obviously, over at KEX Radio, Mark Mason Show, you may recognize him as a correspondent over there for, the tech insider for the Mark Mason Show. And of course, a longtime Computer America correspondent here for us as well. Ralph, welcome back onto the program. How you doing?
Hey, great. It's great to be back, Ben. And today we've got a bunch of diverse stories, starting with a futuristic moon buggy that's in the works.
Yeah, I see that. And it's not just by NASA. I think that's one of the coolest points is, it's not just NASA doing space stuff now. But Ralph, why don't we go ahead and give the folks a nice intro on, what your goal is here on the show?
Yeah. So Ben, of course, as you know, I'm an aggregator of science and tech news features I find by monitoring a host of online outlets. And I look for important and sometimes wild and wacky out there stories that don't usually capture mainstream press attention. And I'm always on the lookout for news that gives a glimpse into where we're headed in robotics, medical technology, sustainable energy technology, transportation advances, space research, physics, you name it. And what I do with each news item is present the essential points and in, I hope, a digestible form. And I stress to our audience to check out the show notes that Ben mentioned, because I put links and pictures to all of the articles. You can dive in deeper. Again, I stress, we're just going to give you the high points of these stories. The really deep science is embedded into these articles, and we encourage you to go out and check them out.
Exactly. So let's, and of course, with that, we're going to start with story number 1, everyone. And if you're watching the video portion, you can see that there. We are going to be playing the videos.
Yeah.
Can't believe it. I haven't even had my coffee yet. But yeah, we're going to be playing the videos and doing all that kind of thing. Exactly. Everyone, I hope you have your coffee cup in hand. You're ready for the show and kick off for Friday. So Ralph, story number 1.
Yeah, story number 1, I picked this up from interestingengineering.com, a really fun website, and also Axios, so 2 sources, and there are other sources too. But the headline here is General Motors and Lockheed Martin are developing electric moon rovers for commercial missions, and we're going to find out also to help NASA. And if you look at the image here, the artist rendering of this thing is really beautiful. But and there's the video that Ben is showing you. So here we go. General Motors and Lockheed Martin recently announced plans to produce a series of 2-passenger electric moon rovers for future commercial space ventures and, no surprise, to support NASA. And they also announced the ambitious goal of testing a prototype vehicle on the moon before NASA's upcoming Artemis project sends astronauts to the moon in 2025. That's pretty ambitious. Mm-hmm. And Ben, you and I are able to see, and our listeners or viewers can see the renderings of this thing. And to me, it looks like something right out of a Star Wars movie. I expect to see a couple of stormtroopers in the front of this thing.
Oh, for sure.
So I'll do a little word picture for you here. It's a super sophisticated, large 4-wheel kind of big go-kart with 2 seats up front and a pickup truck like cargo bed. And my friend Mark Mason at KEX said, well, Ralph, it looks to me like a super futuristic golf cart. And I said, oh yeah, I think you're onto something there. But here's the deal. One of the features I found really interesting is the wheel design. And you have to look very carefully at the artist's rendering to see what we're talking about. But to set the stage for that, the first chassis design, which used the Hummer electrical vehicle as its baseline, didn't move. So they softened the suspension and then gave the vehicle these unusual mesh wheels. And these weird wheels are kind of cool. Or they're segmented mesh-like treads designed to deal with the moon's rough surfaces so they can, articulate and conform around the obstacles, the rubble and so forth on the moon's surface. I just thought that's really, really interesting. Now, another data point here is the new rovers will share the same Ultium battery technology underpinning General Motors' new lineup of electric vehicles, like the GMC Hummer EV and the Cadillac Lyriq. So they're taking something from their commercial bag of tricks and applying it to this Rover. And of course, no surprise, the state-of-the-art electric moon rover will be able to operate autonomously or with the astronauts driving. And it'll have a top speed of roughly 12 miles an hour, which is more than twice the speed of the original Apollo lunar rovers. Yeah. And this part's really, really interesting. And to test the vehicles here on Earth, GM is using a highly advanced driver in the loop simulator borrowed from its NASCAR racing activities. And they're doing this at their research. I know, isn't that something? And they're doing this at their research center in Warren, Michigan. And this simulator emulates the terrain of the moon's surface, complete with craters and rocks, and even emulates the low gravity of the moon, which is 1/6 of the Earth's gravity. And regarding the low gravity on the moon, the developers noted driving on the moon is like driving on ice. Jeff Vogt, GM's advanced vehicle dynamics lead engineer, told me, and that's not me personally, but told the author of the article. And what he goes on to say is we learned pretty quick that if you accelerate too hard to climb an incline with lower gravity, you launch into space. So a lot of technology in this thing, and it is such a cool looking device. And yes, maybe someday there'll be golfers. Well, there were golfers. Didn't an astronaut take a golf club and launch a ball? Well, now they can go around in their golf cart.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And I definitely love the visual of, it's kind of like driving on ice because obviously lower gravity, lower friction, all that kind of thing.
Right.
It's really... This whole story is really incredible, and I think one thing that I, to Mark Mason and you, Ralph, and everyone else out there listening, I have kind of an example because the picture kind of does it a bit of justice, but at the same time, I think people sometimes underestimate the size of these vehicles that they're sending out there. And so like this is the Mars rover, so this is not, this is not the lunar rover, but these things are, I guess when people see pictures, Ralph, with nothing beside them, they think, oh, these, they're like, maybe 4 feet tall and, a couple feet wide, it's small rover. No, these things are, 8 to 10 feet tall, fully extended, and they can be, just essentially the size of small cars that they're launching into space and landing. So it's, these things get very, very big, very, very quick. And it's just incredible that they're even, I guess, planning on doing something like this. It's very, very cool. And
and Ben, to your point about the scale, if you look at the artist rendering, look closely to the left side. And then you'll see an astronaut standing beyond the one on the far left. That gives you some sense of scale. The other thing that's interesting regarding this artist rendering, notice a larger transport vehicle that looks like just a cargo carrying autonomously driven vehicle in the background there. So there's like I said, it's a series of rovers, if you will, or vehicle that GM and Lockheed Martin are exploring. It is a very cool story.
It's also interesting that, I guess Lockheed Martin has been in in kind of like the rocket industry and the space industry to some extent, but to see
Right.
Lockheed and GM being like, NASA's going to accommodate us when we're done. Let's start working on our own stuff right away. This is very, very cool to see more private enterprise looking at the moon because that's what it takes.
That's right. That's right, Ben. And again, the headline actually talked about for commercial missions. So there's a whole world down the road of people going to the moon for all kinds of things other than NASA.
Yeah, you just had an article last week about which everyone can go check out in over on the YouTube or over on our website. But last week you were talking about growing plants in moon soil. So
yes.
It seems like we're putting all the pieces together, or at least people much smarter than myself are putting the pieces together to, eventually have a permanent settlement on the moon. That would be different.
It's coming.
Yeah, that would be different. And the fact that somehow NASCAR makes it into all this is perfect. Story number one. Let's continue with vehicle technology, but this one a bit more down to earth with story number two.
Yes. So this one I got from inputmagazine.com. Headline here is Toyota is working on experimental, portable, and swappable hydrogen cartridges for future cars. Very cool. So look, we all know that all electric vehicles are really hot in the auto industry these days, but not every automaker has given up on other alternative power sources. And Ben, many times we've talked about good old hydrogen. But today, for example, Toyota, for example, is still researching whether or not hydrogen could be a viable option for powering its future vehicles. And Toyota's been exploring this for quite some time, as I know you know, Ben. And of course, just to refresh, the potential huge appeal of hydrogen as a fuel has to do with its ultra climate friendly exhaust, which is just water vapor and heat. So that's the driving force for many people to keep considering this as a viable energy source or fuel source. But here's the problem. Right now, today, doesn't mean forever, but today, hydrogen remains extremely expensive to produce, store, and transport. So that's, a barrier and a reality check.
Right.
But despite that, to make dealing with hydrogen as a fuel source for the individual car owner more practical, Toyota has developed a new experimental portable cartridge to make the use and transportation of hydrogen much safer. And each cylinder cartridge weighs about 11 pounds, is about 16 inches long, and has a diameter of 7 inches. And the idea, Ben, is to have rechargeable hydrogen fuel cartridges that are easy to plug into and out of special ports on the car. All right. So a little bit of a reality check. Toyota admits this is just an early experimental effort. A lot would have to be in place in terms of hydrogen production, getting that cost way down, and equally important, distributing hydrogen. And if you can distribute it in the form of these cartridges that are easy for consumers to deal with, maybe we've got a winning formula here. But I salute Toyota for at least trying to figure this all out and coming up with this kind of clever idea of these swappable, pull in, pull out cartridges. It's really kind of cool. In the images there, you see the woman's hand there. That gives you an idea of the size of these things. Now, 11 pounds could be a barrier for some people with disabilities or with, weaknesses in their arm strength. But, it's still a great effort to try to figure out how can we make this work?
Well, Ralph, you're really close to, or actually you might be in Oregon. I think, pretty sure we talked about that. Don't you guys still have fuel pump, people who do that, or did they finally do away with people who pump your gas for you?
A good one, Ben. That's a trivia thing. I think there's 2 states in the U.S., I think New Jersey and Oregon, where it's against the law for you to pump your own gas, if you can imagine that. Yeah. And you pull up to the filling station and, an attendant's always there. And it's so funny because when we go out of state, even just when we go north to Washington State, And I forget, and I go to the gas station. I sit there, and that's right. And then I have to get out, and I feel like such a dummy. You go to the control panel, as it were, of the gas dispensing unit, the pump, right? And I'm going, oh yeah, that's right. Okay, I pressed this, and yeah. Right. And other people are just doing it real fast because that's an everyday deal. But you're right. But the idea would be, could we have hydrogen cartridge dispensers at some point in the future? Your point's really well made. Maybe that's where they're going with this idea. It's something to think about.
Right. Well, and just like people to fill your gas, maybe people to especially handle these cartridges for you.
There you go. Oh, I see. Yeah, that's a good point. Right.
Yeah. So, the infrastructure is already there where we have a place people can stay, pull up to with your car, swap out your fuel cells for you, and then you just drive away. Yeah,
that's a good point.
And they do all the handling of cartridges and empty and full and that kind of thing. Maybe one day. Although, Ralph, for a lot of what I've heard about hydrogen, they're tackling one of the bigger problems, which is, from my understanding, hydrogen is very, very tiny. Like, it's one of the tiniest elements that we, that are out there. Now, what that means is that if you try to send it via pipe, like you do gasoline, like we do, your pipes have to be much, much better fitting, because this thing is 57 times smaller than gasoline vapor, or or the atoms of it. So it can actually slip out. You get a lot of waste, and while even if you have a major spillage of this liquid hydrogen, it just evaporates extremely quickly. There's no environmental damage. It's whatever. But the problem is, Ralph, it wants to escape because it's so tiny, and the tolerances are going to have to be so small. So this seems like an amazing solution I had never considered, because you can really seal them up very, very well in these in these fuel cells. So
that's a great value add. That was really interesting. I kind of remember hearing about that, but thank you for laying that out, because that again amplifies why this cartridge idea might be such a good way to go.
Right. It's more of like, why don't they just pump it to gas stations like they do gas? And that's one of the reasons. It's just, you're gonna have a lot of waste doing that. Like, it's even smaller than natural gas, smaller than propane, smaller than gasoline vapor. So something unique like this is perfect. And the fact that Toyota is standing by their product, their experiments, this is good. This is an amazing story. So,
and you know what, Ben, to your point about retrofitting existing infrastructure, think of our gas stations, right? Now with what you just added value, you could see someday in the future trucks, sort of like the trucks that deliver bottled water now, right, to residences and businesses. Well, how about trucks someday loaded with these cartridges that pull up to a gas station, and they just create a special lane for the hydrogen cartridge dispensation? Wow. Yeah. I mean, it would be so elegant and so simple. No piping, no this, no that, just, major regional factories, if you want to call them that are recharging these cartridges and getting them out on the trucks and delivering, and then they're just dispensing. Wow. Very cool.
If you're listening, start with something similar to the bottled water industry, and then maybe move up to the bottled, bottled, or the canisters that they do propane in. You know how they always have that propane cabinet, kind of waiting there.
Right.
Maybe upgrade to that industry, take some notes from them, and then we can go from there, and get something a bit more. And it could be all automated too, not to labor this point too much, but I could see an ATM-like device where you come up and I just used one of those the other day for the first time. Yeah.
They terrify me, by the way. But a device where you come up and you put your credit card in, you add your number, whatever, and a little conveyor belt brings out the cartridge, and you put your old cartridge, just like those soda pop can recycling bins. You put your spent cartridge in and pull out a new one. Wow. Okay. We figured it all out.
Yeah. It's the way of the future. We got it all figured out. So, Ralph, story number 2, story number 3, and this one is this one's a bit more on the in the wrong hands, super villain. In the right hands, savior of humanity. So, story number 3.
Yes. So this is really fun. I initially got the story from gizmodo.com, but saw it covered in many, many outlets. MIT, good old Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT scientists propose space bubbles to reverse global warming. Okay. This is really fun. And so, Ben, this news nugget, of course, sounds like something right out of a sci-fi fantasy movie. Mm-hmm. But researchers at MIT believe we can tackle global warming by assembling, and here's the key, assembling in space a massive disc-shaped shield comprised of thousands of individual balloon-like bubbles made of thin silicon all linked together. Wow. And you can see the image there. That gives you some sense of what this is all about. And the goal, of course, is very simple: to deflect sunlight and thus heat to stop further global warming. And according to the MIT team, if we deflect 1.8% of solar radiation before it hits our planet, excuse me, we could fully reverse today's global warming. Fully reverse? Wow.
Yeah.
All right. This astonishingly ambitious proposal, as you'll see why it is, calls for assembling the bubble shield while in a stable Earth orbit. And in specific, the gigantic bubble cluster would be placed in outer space at the Lagrange point, where the sun's and Earth's gravitational pulls create a stable orbit. They counterbalance each other, or counter-react. Thank you. Counteract each other. And the researchers also said that if the plan becomes a reality, the completed shield array would be roughly the size, get ready, roughly the size of Brazil. All right. Brazil is 8.5 million square kilometers. So that's about 3,282,000 square miles. Okay. That's the part that goes, what?
Yeah, it's huge.
That's beyond huge. But the team, of course, admits there would be speaking of huge challenges, including transporting all the components into space, the logistics of assembling the large bubbles in space, and last but not least, finally linking all the bubbles together to create the circular disc-like shield. And here's another reality check noted by the MIT team. They also pointed to the difficulties of maintaining the integrity of the bubble shield. And they said effective replenishment rate will be studied to ensure the shield maintains its size, together with strategies to guarantee a smooth end-of-life transition. Now, the end-of-life transition really caught my eye, because I thought, well, if you assemble this thing, it's in outer space, if it's put together and it's working, why would you have an end-of-life transition? What are you going to do? Just, recycle this stuff? That part I wasn't quite sure about and would need to have more explanation, I think.
well, I guess, and a large part of this is, they're looking for a way to, let's see, if we deflect 1.8% of solar radiation, we could fully reverse global warming. So they're not saying mitigating it to the future. They're saying getting it back to, I'm assuming, the heat levels or whatever, that they're trying to worry about, back to, let's say, pre-industrial, before we started pumping out all this
that
coal
would be
and
wild.
all this kind of thing. So, right. Ralph, because they're looking for reversing global warming, you can't just reverse it forever, because we're going to end up in an ice age or something like that. It has to be phased out. It has to stop at some point.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. You might be onto the point. Yeah.
Because, Ralph, if it never really ended, then whatever you put up there was permanent, and that could be catastrophic as well. And it really reminds me, Ralph, of that episode of Futurama where they put up a giant space. And actually found the clip, but I really don't want to play too much of it because copyright struck. But
looking at it now,
they put up the big space mirror, and then of course a little space debris hits it, deflects it, and then next thing you know, it's actually cutting a magnified swath of superheat across the earth. So, little things like that you got to worry about. But still, it's an amazing idea. And Ralph, could you imagine just for a second if this actually works? Like, obviously, us humans still need to worry about, the composition of our atmosphere and the damage that we're doing to the environment and all that good stuff. But, being able to, I guess, kind of tackle it from the outside and just, really give us some much needed relief in time, this would be amazing. And I really hope, Ralph, I'll be honest, it seems like 25% of your stories come from MIT. They, as an institution, they are putting out so much good research. And I really hope this one especially comes to fruition.
Yeah. MIT, it's just, I don't mean to lean on them so much.
No, they're good.
they come up with such astonishing stuff. And the other thing about MIT, there's a lot of spin-offs. People who take technology initially developed at MIT and then commercialize it. So there's that whole kind of family, if you could think of it like a family tree with MIT at the top, and then you could just start making branches that go on forever and ever and ever of private industry and other government and science outlets that take their ideas and continue them on. As MIT, yeah. I bow low.
They're and it's not that you use them too much. It's that MIT is doing so much,
yes.
So much good science and so much good. Not just that, but they have a really good marketing department. I can recognize that being in PR for a while. They have a very good marketing department.
Yeah, so, and to that point, Ben, real quick, friends, go out to MIT's website, to their newsroom. It's outstanding, wonderful.
Yeah. Definitely. So there's that. Story number 3. Again, links in the show notes so you can check out more there. Story number 4. This one's going to get, and I've been looking at the pictures for, a little bit now. And, it's not, it's not the weirdest thing in the world. Might make you feel a little bit uncomfortable, but then when you realize the implications, it's, this is something you definitely want to see for yourself, because it's, it has so much promise for people who before had to have prosthetics or something like that. This is a whole new ball game.
Yeah, this is going to end our show with really uplifting medical technology news. And that is one of the favorite topics for me, that I almost every week have something involving medical technology, almost every week. Mm-hmm. So the headline here is woman receives 3D printed ear made from her own cells. And I first got this story from The Verge and did some additional research with science.org.au. All the links are there. And if you're looking at the photos on the left here, of what the challenge was, but let's get into the story. And the photo on the right is the 3D printed ear made with this woman's cells. But let's set the stage. Around 1,500 babies born in the U.S. each year have something called microtia, and that's a condition where one or sometimes both ears are underdeveloped or missing entirely. And the images on our show notes give you an idea of what we're looking at here. And typically, microtia patients have prosthetic ears constructed from synthetic materials, or, and this is really kind of bizarre, cartilage from rib grafts. But that process involves 2 and up to 4 surgeries. Very involved, very tedious process. Well, here's a new path. But recently, doctors successfully transplanted the world's first 3D printed ear made from human cells onto a woman born with this rare deformity. And this remarkable 3D tissue printing technology behind this achievement comes from an outfit called 3D Biotherapeutics. And I know you know this, Ben, but for our listeners who may not be aware, 3D bioprinters work in almost the exact same way as 3D printers we all know and love, but with one key difference. Instead of delivering materials such as plastic, or let us say printing layers of plastic, ceramic, metal, or even food, they deposit layers of biomaterial, which could be living cells, that may include living cells, as it says there, to build complex structures, including things like blood vessels or skin tissue. Ding, 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 skin tissue. That's here, relates to this story. So 3D Biotherapeutics experimental process involved taking cartilage cells from the patient's existing good ear. And those cells were then grown in a lab and then 3D bioprinted into a shape to match the patient's intact ear. And that's what's shown in our image on the right there in the show notes. And here's a key benefit of the 3D biotherapeutics process. The 3D printed ear will keep regenerating cartilage over the patient's lifetime. And because it's made from her own cells, it's less likely to be rejected. So this is a really great synthesis of biology and 3D printing and bioprinting, all this coming together. wow, I just think is so cool and so hopeful for these poor people that suffer from this terrible deformity.
It's been a long journey for people to be able to 3D print body parts. Like there's actually a very sad early stages of 3D printing human body parts. That it's like a documentary, and this doctor, he was a total quack, and he was doing horrible things. But the part that that you point out here with this that I really like, Ralph, is that they're able to build complex structures like blood vessels or skin tissue. The blood vessel part was always one of the hardest, because it's one thing to print, and this this works out well for this lady. The cartilage in your ear doesn't need a lot of blood. It's just kind of cartilage, and the skin will grow over it, and it'll be good. But to put blood cells, and like the reason why we're not doing like kidneys or hearts or lungs at this point is because we need to have those blood vessels. And the fact that they're starting to nail that, Ralph, very encouraging, because today ear, tomorrow, maybe something a little bit more complex, like like an organ. So.
Well, and Ben, to your point, I was thinking about, after doing this story, I thought to myself, like you were just alluding to, what other things could this process that worked for this ear be applied for? Well, what if you have a traumatic injury to your nose and you lose the tip of your nose or something like that? Could they take, cells from your nose and grow them in the lab and then 3D bioprint a little replacement tip? Let's say if something happens like that. I mean, cosmetic, not for vanity, but cosmetic for, genuine medical reasons. I think the possibilities here.
Yeah, just recently we had a family member here go through. She needed to have a cancerous mole removed on her nose or something like that, and had to take a big kind of chunk.
Good one.
And then she had reconstructive surgery. Things like that. That could be very, very helpful to rebuild something that was completely taken away. Very interesting. And by the way, I'll even throw this in way at the end of Ralph's show notes, just to keep Ralph's notes his notes. But I found this article here, Paolo Macchiarini. That was the gentleman that I was talking about earlier. And if you want to see just how far 3D printing had kind of come, this article does a good job of, and here's him with his 3D printed tracheas. Yeah, this guy was a total nut job, but it did lay the groundwork for better practices and, stuff like the story that we just talked about. So, Ralph, let's just say that rejecting implants is a very, very dangerous thing. So the fact that it's made out of your own cells, even better.
Exactly.
That's perfect. So everyone, that is story number 4, and that's about it. So Ralph, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, talking about all this. And yeah, you have certainly found a great lineup of stories, and I'm looking forward to next week as well.
Hey, yeah, you bet. Always a blast.
All right, everyone. So if you want to find out more, computeramerica.com, Ralph Bond Wicks. If you just search that, that'll pop right up, or head on over to the show notes and we'll have a link to Ralph's site as well with everything that he does here on the show, because, hey, every week he comes on and delivers great stories like these. So until next time, everyone, have a great day. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.